little shorter. But this week is going to be a final a final step of what I wanted to get across these 4 khutbas. And is there going to be like most of the points I'm going to say is going to feel repeated, but I wanted to repeat the same stuff again, some of the stuff, so that we realize why I was talking about the stories of Musa alayhi salam and his followers and Pharaoh. To begin with, the first week I talked about the chaos of the world. The first khutbah about this, and I chose this story of Musa alayhi salam. I'm going to talk about next, why Musa alayhi salam, and that I covered in the second week. But the first we talk about the chaos of the world and how history is repeating itself, and the stories of the Quran are not just for our amusement, but the stories of the Quran exist so that we can remember what happened to the people before us and what they did and what we are supposed to do and what we are not supposed to do. So either we can have a choice. Again, going back to the story of Musa alayhi salam and Pharaoh, and as we see what's going on in the world right now, there being people killed left, right, and center just for saying La ilaha illallah, and that happened in history before too. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to give these stories in the Quran, and that came in the form of Pharaoh and what he used to do with his people. And I gave you 3 things that he used to do. The first thing he did was divide and conquer, and we see in our history as how the people have ruled us in recent history by dividing the people in nations, so in different nations, so that they can rule for long. Which is why in India, Pakistan, there such a thing exists, where there are constant conflicts about constant conflicts between us about religion, about culture, and who is better. Even and these borders, there is a particular reason that these borders exist. Divide people into nations and nations, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we divide people into nations and tribes so that they can know each other, so that they can accept the good within the cultures, within their nations, and reject the wrong of other nations. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sunnah. But people exactly knew of this world. They were smart enough to know, if we can divide these people, we can rule them for long. Which is why even Muslim people who exist in India, if there's something going wrong within their own country, or Pakistani people within the same nation, they see something wrong within their own nations, and they can be the one who's oppressing the other party. They will take the side of their nation. Why? Because we belong to India, or we belong to Pakistan. Even though they are Muslim people, even though a Muslim is supposed to stand for right, even though at the cost of their own beliefs, own identity. This is how Muslims supposed to, which is why some people don't care if someone's dying in a village of Pakistan, an innocent 2 year, 3 year old, just because they believe that it's okay, because their media is keep feeding in their mind that they were terrorists. That's why they killed that 2 year child who didn't know of anything. And that's just one example within our country. And I give you example of my people. Why? Because it's easier for us to understand. And then there are people, the history of Palestine. You would find out how how the people, Gora people, white people of the world, how they rule the world. They divided. Looking back to in history, and even history of United States of America. If you study U.S. history, you will find the reason why these people, like countries, small countries like Peru and Guatemala, and these Honduras, they are part of US, and they are apparently part of US as well. The small countries, these small countries. So whenever they used to, first of all, their own people, their conflicts used to happen, because American people used to give them weapons and then divide the people within themselves, and they would start fighting each other and they would take over. That's how divide and conquer works. So that's one lesson we get from the story of Pharaoh, and that's gonna happen to us too, and that's been happening to us too. This is why studying recent history of our own ancestors is important. and realizing that we are being controlled, we are the master puppets of these people. We have to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give these stories to us so that we can empower, we can realize what's going on, and then we can when wake up and stand for ourselves as a Muslim, so that we don't divide ourselves in the boundaries of what other people establish of the world. Like these people wanted us just divided. We are divided now. It's all about nations. It's not about we being we a person next to each other being saying la ilaha illallah doesn't matter because he's from a different country. So they are being treated differently. That's one lesson that we learn from story of Firaun. That's how he ruled the world for thousands of years. The pharaohs of the world. They used the conquered the world for thousands of years. That's one strategy. Second strategy was going on what's called like grassroots elimination. घास काटने से बोलते हैं, cutting the grass. And if there's one thing, you can you can take out the grass completely so it doesn't grow up anymore. That's one way. Second way is you just go trim the grass enough so that it just grows back again, and then you're gonna trim it again. That's what what pharaohs used to do. They used to go kill people every now and then, bring their morale down, and then do it again. Every few years. This is what's going on right now in Israel and Palestine. I mean, they can wipe them off right now, but they don't. Why? Because that way they can keep their kids keep growing up, and then they're gonna go kill a few people there, and then every few years you do the same thing again. Which is why it's happening every 20 years, 10 years. A repeated scene in history, right? These people are not being wiped out on the surface so that their morale don't go up. That's what second strategy Firaun used back then, though and history is repeating itself. And then the last one was killing the babies and leaving the killing the babies and the women. And at times they used to leave women as well so that they can have children again. And I'm repeating my point from last week and 2-3 weeks ago. But just to remind you, this khutbah is just about the lesson we can get from there and how we're supposed to wake up and realize that the story mentioned in the Quran are not for entertainment and not for just information, but these stories are relevant right now. And that way, when you kill babies and children and women, and oftentimes leave the women so that they can keep giving birth, and so that they once this happened in their life, they won't think about raising the voice again, standing up for themselves. And that's what's exactly going on in Gaza right now. So once within these three things, once we wake up and realize that we are Muslims and we are not supposed to be divided just because of the boundaries, the fake boundaries that are being created by the world. If because they want us to be in that mindset that we stay divided, so that because if we join forces on la ilaha illallah and stick up for each other, then we're going to rule the world for sure. Allah is going to give us power, and that's the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's barakah in unity, and that's what happened. If you go back to history of United States America, not the history, right, not what's going on right now, but they established this country based on ground that there will be no discrimination based on religion, language. Everyone have their rights of to privacy, rights of freedom of speech. That's why this nation came to power, and they were united. They were not divided based on where they're from. This is why they exactly established this country, that we will invite people from all of the world, and then they make this country great. That was their agenda, not what you're seeing right now, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this nation a power. But going back to about us, if we don't forget about nations, forget about boundaries, I'm talking about countries. It starts from taking care of the person next to you, our families, the people we work with. It starts from there. We care for them, we take their side just because there's my brother is a believer, a person next to Kaf is sitting next to Abdul Rahman If he doesn't take his side, when disbelievers are attacking him for saying La ilaha illallah, then definitely just because I have something personal against Abdurrahman, I don't take his side. This starts from here. It's that basic. Then what I'm doing with my family, how I'm treating my family, how I treat my wife, how I treat my kids. That's where it starts from. How I deal with my neighbor, who is a disbeliever, by the way. How I treat them, how I treat the people, my customers, how I treat my work, how I treat myself, how I make myself a god greater than Allah by following what I want. It starts from here. So this is the lesson I want you to take from this story of Firaun and his Firaun, how he ruled the world, and how we are supposed to not make the same mistakes as the follower of Musa alayhi salam did. And I'm gonna come to that next. And by the way, majority of the follower. I'm talking about not talking about the righteous amongst them. So that there's a lesson in this story for all of us, and it's time to wake up and realize that just it's more than just countries and cultures. It's about Muslim Ummah as a whole. The second story I shared to you about was about how the Musa and his followers escaped Egypt, and the first thing they were tested with was food, water, and shelter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them all of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them all. But despite that, they were ungrateful. They were ungrateful because they asked for more than what they had. And in a sense, they were asking for going back to Egypt, where they were living as slaves under oppression. But they wanted to go back so that they can have the luxuries of the world. Because they wanted the same food they had, because it was easier for them in Egypt apparently. But they were slaves. They did not recognize. They were being taken out of slavery and they were eventually promised a land of their own, which they did not fight for. So choices will be given to us too in this world, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give us blessings in His own way to us. If I am grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'll definitely be among the grateful servants of Allah. But if the choice is going to be that if I am going to just ask for hope for make this world my primary purpose, I'm going to chase money, power, wealth, um, fame, if this becomes my primary purpose, then I'm not truly grateful for what Allah has given me, because I am constantly asking for more and more and more and more and more, and that hunger doesn't stop. Because that hunger is going to leave a hole in my heart. How? Because वो क्या होता है कि वो सुराख कहीं भरता नहीं है वो वाला, एक के बाद एक, अब ये गाड़ी मिल गई, अब ये घर मिल गया, ये अब इतने बच्चे हो गए, अब क्या, that race would never end. But if you and I choose to stay firm on the path of Allah by following Allah's commands, by worshipping Allah as He is, by treating the people who are sitting next to me right, their path is tough. But if you are truly grateful to Allah what He has given us, you will despite of that, we will stay firm on that path, because we are truly grateful to Allah what He has given us. Then I talked to you about the last 2 weeks ago. The khutbah was about Musa alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and why are the stories of Musa alayhi salam being given to us, and what's the relationship between Musa alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they were literally given the same kind of test with nations, with the oppressor in form of Quraysh, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and with Firaun, with Musa alayhi salam. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam eventually escaped. He migrated like literally Musa alayhi salam did from Egypt, and Rasulullah sallam from Medina to Makkah, and then Rasulullah sallam was given communal trials, just like Musa alayhi salam did, and where Musa alayhi salam, majority of their nation failed that trial, but Rasulullah sallam, Sahaba radhiyallahu anhu, succeeded that trial. So now the choices are going to be given to us from that story, that either we can be among those who people who failed like the Musa alayhi salam, like Musa alayhi salam follower, or we can be amongst the people who are succeeded. They were in the form of Sahaba radhiyallahu anhu. And that's going to be everything कि हम लोग what do we choose to do when a haram thing was presented to us, when a certain amount of money was presented in a haram way. Did I choose to take that or no? Did I choose to talk to my wife down after she needed my support? Did I choose to serve my parents even after they were abusive to me, or they were not abusive, but because I had more power now, either can I talk back to them or not? In these simple forms, our trial may not be fighting in the war, but our trials are as basic as our dealing with the people and our dealing with ourselves. And then this was the purpose of comparison of Musa alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that and their followers. So either we could be among the Sahaba who succeeded, or we can be among the people of Fir'aun, of Musa alayhi salam, who failed in their trials. That was the second story I discussed. Already talked to you about being ungrateful in the form of man and salva, which they, even though they had literally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving them a divine intervention of feeding them, they were ungrateful to Allah. And all this obedience goes back to being ungrateful to Allah at the end of the day. But if I disobey Allah, I'm not content with what I have today. That's the psychology behind being ungrateful and being obedient or disobedient. The last story I discussed to you and last week was the story of worshipping of idol again. Going back to the story of Musa alayhi salam, where idol worshipping was discussed, where people they chose to worship idols because they wanted success of this life. They thought that if they worship a certain god, and I talked to you a whole idea about why people worship other than Allah. That was the purpose of last week's khutbah. Why people worship other than Allah? It's because they think that they'll get more success if they follow a certain person or a certain god. If they worship that, they will get me back with money, fame, power, which is why the Samiri, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to mention in them in the Quran, so that we may look back at this example, this particular person, till the day of judgment, where people will, it may not be that we may be given physical idols to worship, but we can be following trends of the people. And as to go give you example, back in India and Pakistan, there are a lot of custom about peer fakir. They give you taweez. If you literally go to a grave and do sujood, you go to a peer to get a, what do you call it, tasbih or amulet, or also called wazifa. Where did not concept of wazifa did not exist in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The only thing they were supposed to follow is this what comes from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith, Sahih hadith. That's the way supposed to follow. Why do these people give out these things to their followers? The only reason why they give it to you, because eventually when you go to a peer fakir, you ask them, I'm not having a male child, I'm not able to get a job, I'm not able to conceive, that particular person I loved is not loving me back. They're all material gains. They're all chasing material gains of this world, which is why they go to these people, so that we may not have idols, but we can go and follow these idols without even knowing them. Which is why Rasulullah sallam, he mentioned in the hadith that he is supposed to recite Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ushrika bika shay'in a'lam wa astaghfiruka ma la a'lam. That dua 3 times a day, in the morning and the evening. Because sometimes our idols can be as physically present as those, but sometimes our idols could be people, and sometimes our idol is going to be ourselves, where we worship what we believe. Because other people who are saying what they're saying doesn't matter. So the idol of desires, that's one example. We're tested by lust, hunger. We are tested by lust. We are tested by greed. We are tested by money. If I choose to follow what I want, then we are not less than the people of Samiri, the followers of Samiri. That's the lesson for us. And last thing I'd like to mention, and this was the basically the summary of all of this. Why I discussed what I discussed, and I mentioned to you briefly last week as well. I closed the khutbah because of shortage of time. Um, the whole purpose of this is, to remind all of us we are seeing the world in physical senses, and we see success in the form of what we see success of the people who are successful in this world. How? By money. People who have more money, people who have more offspring, people who have more fame, people who have more power. That's the people we try to follow in this world. But choices would be that either I stood up for Allah and His Messenger, but life is not going to be easy. जिंदगी आसान नहीं होने वाली, honestly. When we choose this path, life is going to be, literally, क्या बोलते हैं, the boat in a storm. The life is throwing this left and right, boat is going up and down, but you're holding on to it. That's literally what's going to happen. But uh, if you look deep, these people who are successful in this world, they're the whole inside. I talked to you about how whole and being inside in their self, right? Where they're in the cycle of chasing money, power, and all of this. It becomes their primary reason. And there's still people who commit suicide just because they lost their job, just because they're someone they loved didn't love them back. For small reasons they commit suicide. Why? Because their primary reason was this success of this world. Because they see themselves successful if they achieve a job, they achieve this much money, they achieve this much power, they achieve that particular lover, they achieve having this many people, children, and their children want having jobs. This becomes a loop which doesn't end. Whereas a life of a believer is going to be tough when they have to lose their job just because they said free Palestine, and stood up in front of a podium of people where everyone was booing that person. um they, especially I'm watching these news and broadcasts and whatnot, where people who are by the way, who are non-Muslims, who are standing up, and they're being thrown out of the what do you call it, like out of the court, or out of big gathering in front of a politician. They're being thrown out. Apparently on the surface it doesn't look good, but there are Muslim people too who like people. Example of current time right now, there was a student, two to three students who went to jail just because articles they wrote articles about Palestine and whatnot. The choices would be similarly given to us too. So on the surface it doesn't seem good, you're going to prison, but these people are the most successful in Allah's eyes. And despite of that, all the chaos of the world, that person is smiling, man. That person is still joyous. That person is still standing up for that thing. The right of the people, the right of their Muslim followers. And the world is collapsing. And I'll give you a silly example. Within our company, someone's dad has been sick for last few days, last few weeks, a month or two. Man, this guy is working with me. Even though this guy apparently it would seem like this guy should be sad and upset, and this is happening. He's smiling, man. He's smiling all the time. He's working hard. Why? What makes him? The world is collapsing around him. His dad, I don't want to mention it, dad has been paralyzed for years. But just because he believes in Allah, and just because he believes that Allah, it's okay. I might lose my father, but I'm still gonna stay on my belief on Allah, because everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for good, and it's not under his control that his dad is in this health, but he's still smiling. I'm like amazed how what a belief a potential Allah has given us. And forget about the reason why I gave you this example was to remind you, these are normal people, common people, who will enter Jannah just because they stayed firm on the religion. And the people in the war right now, They don't have food, water, shelter, nothing. They're still, you know, reciting ayat of Allah. I'm like amazed by that, man. Whereas a disbeliever who was facing all these trials would have committed suicide. They have gone to the top of the roof and felt. Subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, they're the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Baqarah, these people who will have no fear nor sadness. He mentioned about what's going to happen in the afterlife, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this gift in this world too, where we are in certain situations too. We are in certain miseries and loss, but we still say la ilaha illallah and we believe and still keep smiling. If I have one bad day, next day wake up, Allah definitely is gonna be for better. And there's no better phrase than we say in Urdu, Allah behtar karenge. Allah will do the best. Subhanallah. This is what Allah gives us for a believer. Disbeliever can never have this gift in this world, and of course we are gonna be in the afterlife. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set for good, because that's the ultimate goal of what we are chasing, and what is the end goal of all of this, that we will go through whatever in this life. We'll go through tough times, we'll lose people, we lose family, we will lose physically, emotionally, our loved ones, but as long as you did it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you did it for right reasons, and your intentions were pure, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guaranteeing us nor fear nor sadness in this world, and in the afterlife we are set for good, where we will be permanently among the best of the company, among the best of the people of the follower of Musa alayhi salam, and Rasulullah sallam, and the Sahaba radhiyallahu anhu. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be among the best of the company within ourselves too, and may Allah unite us, our families, all of us in general, for those within the best of the company, and there's no better company than the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is eventually what we're chasing, which is why people worship what they worship, because they're chasing that in this world. But eventually, if they stand by the truth, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His messengers follow the messenger's teaching, we will ultimately meet Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive any shortcoming in my speech.